A Bitcoin billionaire just bought the first ticket to a Mars flyby mission. Redwire stock just gained 40% in the last month. Any guesses why? NASA is putting on their reorg boots, as I used to say back when I was back in the corporate world. Rocket Lab nailed a $90 million deal to build geosats for the Space Force. And a company called 1789 Capital made a strategic investment in Starlab. The FAA okays Blue Origin's New Glenn for launch. Plus, Blue also announces a $600 million expansion on Marin Island. And 25 years after Dennis Tito, will space tourism really fly? We'll be asking that of our guest, Annette Toivonen. From the news desk, the Center for Space Commerce and Finance, my name is Thomas Andrew Olson, and this is The Unknown Quantity. And as you know, this program is brought to you by the Center for Space Commerce and Finance. And what is the Center? Well, we are a 501c3 organization. We champion and strengthen emerging space startups and space-adjacent enterprises worldwide through advisory, access, and advocacy. Our pitch events and world-class boot camps fortify startups to be better investor-ready. Excuse me. A lot of our work, especially this podcast, is supported by our listeners and fans like you. So if you go to cscf.space/support and click that Point of Day donate button, a little in the tip jar each month makes a big difference. Don't forget to like and subscribe and tell your friends. Speaking of friends, my oldest space friend, Michael Lane, who just got a permit from the city, apparently, to build onto his house a new porch of Mithra, is here with me. Michael, come on in.
Hey, how's things?
Well, other than the fact that at 3 a.m. in the morning, some woman here in Florida was caught trying to go down I-95 in a shopping cart using a shower curtain as a sail. Only here. Only here.
Only there.
Must be the holiday weekend. It is Memorial Day. My favorite jarhead. Thank you for your service, and Sean too. Sean, go Army guy. Our intrepid producer. Thank you guys for all you did to keep America what it is. So I know I didn't get a chance to do that myself. My dad, of course, served in World War II. And I had 5 uncles who also served in various capacities between the 1940s and the 1960s. So it's in our blood.
It is. It's a somber day. I was talking to Sean a minute ago. I'm not going to tell his story, but he had some moments. I was super fortunate. I did not have to do that. I did not lose anybody. My mom, my dad, my aunts, my uncles, my cousins, they all went through it. My 4 years was a cakewalk compared to every single other person I know. So
I was at that very weird place. I missed Vietnam by like 2 months.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Great.
I know, but still, it's like everybody else going, hey, why didn't you go in? Actually, I tried to get into the Air Force Academy. That just didn't happen. But so I guess the universe had different plans for me. I don't know what else to say about it. But for all that, this is a day for all those who didn't make it, who didn't come home.
Exactly right.
In fact, my father and most of my uncles, they're all buried in Willamette National Cemetery.
I don't know if you know that. I was on the color guard. I buried more than 50 Marines on the color guard. Yeah. It was the most solemn thing I did. As a throw dummy for hand-to-hand combat, and I did some other fun stuff. But the most important thing I did, I think, was that. Dallas is like, yeah, I thought we were going to take the day off. That was a typo on our part, and we all thought we were going to take a day off. And when we started this call, we're like, were we going to take this day off? So here we are.
We all kind of woke up this morning going, what are we doing?
Yeah. So,
we have a great guest, so we're not going to disappoint her.
Guest, and
we're not going to disappoint you. So, for those who came today, thank you for coming. And we'll try to give it the best we got today.
She's European, so she doesn't care about our American holidays. Like, she's like,
right.
She I don't even know if she knew what was happening, but here we are, and let's get to it. All right, what do we got?
Let's start in. Well, obviously, for those of you who watched it, I saw parts of it. The Block 3, Starship V3.
Yep.
Ars Technica article says, well, it still has more to prove because there's a couple of glitches here and there, but it ran all the way, start to finish like it was supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the booster, I saw that the booster just was beautiful when it climbed away like that. It was just huge. Biggest rocket ever built, and it took off. It didn't, explode. Did a rapid, unscheduled disassembly. And so it splashed down the Indian Ocean about an hour later, and we're done. I guess they said the scoring on the outer skin was looked a lot better than previous missions. So they're getting that better as far as heat shielding.
It's a big deal.
Heat shield held up better. Better onboard cameras, the whole thing. They redid their aerodynamic flaps through the descent,
right?
And so those worked really well. They did banking maneuvers, and they finally they did the flip and a final burn, and boom, there we go. Now they said,
you can see the aft flap there making minor.
Oops.
That's fine. No, right. They said 2 Raptor engines, one of the 33 on the Super Heavy and one of 6 on Starship itself, failed during the launch sequence.
Yeah.
That's nothing new, but this is the new Raptor 3 redesign, and so they'll have to look at that. They just burned the remaining engines a little longer than usual, and everything worked fine. I mean, that kind of redundancy goes all the way back to Saturn.
Yep.
So,
no, I don't really have anything to say. It's been talked all over the internet for the last several days. I'm excited. I think it's great. I can't wait for the next one. I don't think I heard when the next one is planned. Do you know? Have you heard?
I did not. I didn't hear anything.
The timing of dropping the IPO prospectus and then flying V3, that was perfect theater. That was brilliant. So pretty excited about that.
Well, interestingly, the hype prior to the launch, everything was all about how is the launch going to affect the IPO, so they have to succeed. It's all the pressure. Right. It went fine for what it needed to do. It went fine. It needs some more work, but it worked. It basically worked. So okay, now we're going to make it better, and we're going to do more iterative stuff. And then before the year's out, they will be in orbit, and maybe doing a lot more interesting things. So, and that's why the next article is interesting. We don't have to go over it in detail, but it says why SpaceX defies valuations. Because you can't just stack it up by the numbers.
No.
It says it made 18.7 billion last year, but they still have a speculative valuation target of 1.7 times. It's 1.75 trillion. That's a multiple of 93 times sales.
Right.
Now most companies on the S&P are trading at about 3 times sales.
Right.
Yeah.
It's basically saying just wait 100 years and we'll be fine. But I don't think it's going to be 100 years, right? That's what.
I hope not. I better find a med bed or something if we're going to wait 100 years.
Right. I mean, basically, no one has really picked up on the SpaceX isn't a rocket company anymore, and we should value it as an AI company, right? Because that's where 90+% of the revenues is coming from now. But basically people are saying, this is like betting on Columbus, not really knowing what's on the other side, but there's a lot on the other side, and we'll just be patient for it.
And that's about the last time we had a multiple like that.
So,
when the Spaniards were hauling gold across the ocean as fast as they could load those ships up.
Right.
And that was the first actual case of gold inflation in the history of civilization. Actually, the value of gold dropped. They were bringing home so much of it.
Right. That's insane. Yeah. So we'll get there. Everybody's asking me whether I would buy or sell, or I'm like, I'm not going to make that decision. I'm not going to make that decision for months. Actually, if it's as good as everybody says it is, we'll know. If it crashes like some people say it's going to, we'll know that too. But if I'm on day one, that doesn't matter to me. So, I don't currently plan to put anything into the market next week, 2 weeks from now.
Right. Yeah. Not that we have a lot to put into the market right now, anyway.
Yeah.
But this next thing is a real quick one. We've mentioned this before. There's a company called Lunar Outpost that just got a $30 million Series B to build a rover. What I didn't realize, though, and this is where it goes into the detail, is that they're actually betting that when the first permanent base being built in the moon, it's going to be built by robots, and they want to be at the front end of that. And so they're placing. So that's what this deal really is. It's a bet that robots are going to be doing it first, and they'll be the ones leading the charge, which will make the valuation go. If it works.
I agree with them. I do. Yeah. I agree with them. I'd love to hear from Dallas, and since he's the resident lunar construction guy, I'd like to hear what he's got to say about that one. But that's where I'm at. I think it makes sense.
Yep. Okay, moving on. A Bitcoin billionaire named Chun Wang. He plans on doing a Starship flyby of Mars before they attempt to land humans on the surface. Because we talked last show, we talked a little bit about guys that want to make that flight. Well, here's the guy who's actually paying for it,
right,
and banking the thing. So,
wow.
And he co-founded F2 Pool, which I knew nothing about, as one of the first Bitcoin mining pools. And he's going to command that mission. They have not announced a launch date, obviously, but he also wants to do a Starship flight around the moon before he goes to Mars. So,
yeah, I think that's awesome. I've been talking a long time about how that Venn diagram of the crypto community and the space community is basically 1-to-1. But they haven't there's only a few crypto people in the sector yet. And Dallas, just a second. There's only a few crypto people in the sector. The guy who runs Vast. No, is it Vast? Vast is Robinhood. Who's the other guy? It's Vast. It's Vast, and then Robinhood runs the new Space Cowboy Group. Yeah. So Space Fund actually wrote a special section of their prospectus specifically to entice the crypto folks, and they did not get very many of them, but I think it's there. I think it's happening, and it's really good to see this. And the moon flyby and the Mars flyby. As a tourist, we will definitely be talking to Dr. Annette here in a few minutes about that. So excited about that. Yeah,
exactly right. So here's the interesting thing. It was last Friday, actually. I know Redwire is a pretty solid company anyway.
Yeah.
But they just won an 8-figure deal to supply their Penguin Mk3 system to a NATO ally. They secured a $15 million follow-on order from the Army. And so, but their stock has gained 40% in a month. And so it kind of gives you a taste of how defense contracts, the SpaceX IPO buzz are all boosting investor sentiment at this point. So there's already a lot of side things that are going on with a lot of other different, space or space-related stocks, even just prior to the IPO. It hasn't even happened yet.
Rocket Lab went up a bunch, like just across the board. It's green with everybody. Some companies only went up 5%, but this one, and I think Rocket Lab, I'm not sure. I think it was Rocket Lab also made 30% in a week. Right.
Right.
There is a tsunami of new money coming into this sector. And everybody who's kind of well positioned is going to get a piece of it. So cool. Good for them. I hadn't seen this article. I actually missed this, so I don't have a lot to comment on this one.
No, that's okay. Well, here's some interesting news. Years ago, back when I was still in the corporate world, I spent like 12 years at one place. In those 12 years, we must have gone through an reorganizational period at least 3 times. And so we referred to that as putting on our reorg boots for the obvious reasons, which you have to walk through to get through that reorganization. Well, guess who's doing it? NASA. They're having a major reorganization.
Yeah, boy, they are.
Hopefully so they can get their job done more efficiently. At least that's the claim. 5 here's the thing. 5 programmatic mission directorates are now going to be combined into 3.
Yep.
And so they're going to adjust personnel, which means, what does that mean? Firing people? I don't know. And changes in reporting chains, and they're probably trying to shorten them if they're smart at all. 3 of their 9 civil centers, Goddard, Glenn, and Kennedy, have new directors, and they've decided to compete the contract for management and operation of JPL.
That's huge. That's almost heart attack inducing. Yeah.
Those guys have been showing us the planets for 60 years.
Yep.
And now what?
And maybe somebody else is going to show us the planets. I don't think that the missions will go away. I think they're looking for a more efficient path to do that. I was thinking about this. All right, let's just kind of think through.
Okay.
Look at the last administrators, right? You had a senator, you had a congressman, you had a former Marine Corps general. None of them had the business chops that Isaacman does.
Right.
And so at first I was like, wait a second, he's breaking up my beloved NASA. And then I started thinking about it, like, if anybody was going to do it, he's probably the best candidate. As much as I love the Marine Corps general that was in charge, Bolden, that guy was not particularly good operationally or administratively. Certainly a congressman and a senator don't have that experience. So nobody has been at NASA that can streamline that org for 20 years. So, well, maybe 20 is extreme, 15 years. So I'm at the wait and see, but I'm actually going to bet on my guy Jared on this one.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
I was worried at first, but I'm going to take a step back and think this through a little bit.
Yeah. Charlie Bolden was still talking about the stick while he was standing up there watching the first dragon, the first supply dragon dock with ISS.
Yeah.
He's talking about stuff that's so far old and we're never going to do it. He's talking about it anyway. And here's this thing behind him going, no, here comes the future.
My beer. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Hey,
Okay.
I love all this comments in the chat here, y'all. I'm not actually reading much of it, but I appreciate y'all all being here. Joe Pursuto's telling us that Voyager was up 25%. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate that. Um, Doug, Dallas, Jason, Veronica, Jonathan. Good to see you, Jonathan. Love that you guys are all here. Joe Luttrell, thanks, buddy. Appreciate it. Let's stick with it. We're kind of on the schedule here, but
Yep.
we really appreciate y'all being here. Thank you.
Okay. Well, this is kind of quick. Rocket Lab was awarded a $90 million contract to build geosats hosting space domain awareness payloads for the Space Force. And so that's their first satellite production program, apparently.
That's the thing that's actually news, is they're like, all right, well, we're pretty good with those rockets. Let's go make satellites now. For them, they are following the SpaceX playbook, right? They're following the Blue Origin playbook. When you get big enough and your rockets work, you can then move up the value chain and start building satellites. So I think that's a big thing. I think that's a big thing. It's one of the reasons why their stock went up recently. So
yeah, absolutely. Okay, next up, another quick one. An outfit called 1789 Capital, how patriotic. They're announcing a strategic investment in Starlab.
That's cool.
And so they don't mention a number.
No, Voyager's really cagey about that. I haven't seen a number come out of Voyager in 6 months to a year. Yeah.
But it does reflect mounting confidence.
If they do say so themselves.
Yep, in themselves. Love it. Two things from Blue Origin. The FAA cleared New Glenn for launch after their problem a couple months back. But they're also announced at the same day, they announced an expansion of the Rocket Park manufacturing complex on Merritt Island, supporting 500 new aerospace jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's been cleared, and it's called Project Horizon. There'll be 830,000 square foot manufacturing facility for upper stages of New Glenn rockets.
Right.
So, and Ron DeSantis is all happy about that, bringing jobs to Florida.
Sure.
Iran. Okay.
The number that I was like, oh, that's a lot, right? 100,000 a year times 500 jobs, 50 million new jobs. You start adding in the multiplier effect of more dog walkers and babysitters for your kids, and
eats coffee outlets. Yeah.
That cycles through the economy like crazy. So
it will.
Nice job.
Yep. The rising tide floats the boats and all that stuff. But they say a rising tide floats all boats. That includes the boats carrying the pirates, and so you have to really be careful, in those times. The last thing, and this is beautiful. I just found the most beautiful segue today.
Perfect timing.
It was amazing. Here it is. It's a Forbes article. They're saying, "Will space tourism ever fly 25 years after the first paying astronaut?"
Yep. Good timing for our guest. I used to call it the Tito effect.
Yeah.
It opened maybe not a floodgate, but a trickle, and I think it was necessary for the industry. So, but I've always kind of held back. I've always been a little skeptical of that. So.
Yeah. Well, the reason the guy at Forbes is raising the question is because all of space tourism supposedly has been kind of a holding pattern. They haven't really done.
Right.
They haven't really done a lot since 2 years ago. I think it was the last one from somebody, and basically Blue said we're not going to fly any more New Shepard tourists until we get this lunar lander thing done.
Right.
So it could be a couple more years.
Right. And
And
they
it's trying to
basically
pick up the
handed
slack.
the market to Virgin Galactic and that Chinese group that's trying
Yep.
to do it.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
They're like, here's our new market. We proved it. It's real,
Mhm.
but we're not going to do it anymore. That
Yeah.
worries me. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. And so there hasn't been. They thought we'd see a lot more space tourism even since the X Prize won. We thought we'd
Yeah.
see, those things were going to be built and rolling off an assembly line, and dozens of people would be flying at least suborbitally every year.
Yep.
And that just haven't materialized. And so, I mean, Virgin Galactic's only flown 23 people in 22 years.
Woof. That sounds awful when you say it that way.
Yeah. And Blue Origin has flown 92 space tourists, basically 65% of the total that have flown ever. And so they put a hold on it.
Yeah.
And so it does raise the question. Now, Dennis Tito was at one time an aerospace engineer at the JPL.
Yeah.
He did not settle for a 10-minute taste of space. He made, and it only cost him $20 million.
Right.
They were charging a lot more years later.
Yeah. It was a bargain.
And so that kind of raises that question, is there a subsector of this economy or not? Because at those flight rates, how is that go as an investment even, let alone a thing to do? I mean, if I win the Powerball tonight, how long do I have to wait to even get a suborbital ride?
Yep.
I thought 21 years later, after 22 years later, after the X Prize, I thought there'd be a lot more opportunity than this.
I thought so too. I'm gonna Jonathan doesn't know this, but I'm gonna toss this up. OceanGate kicked a big money hole in space tourism. So Jonathan, you don't know, but John and Tom and I both know Guillermo Sonlim, who was a co-founder of OceanGate. So we watched that whole thing.
With great interest. And we had him on the show.
We had him on the show.
Really gracious.
Yeah.
It was a great interview.
But it's true, right? This argument that he says is true. It did kick this thing. So all right, well, let's bring in an expert who actually knows what the hell she's talking about.
That's right. I had to get her take on this immediately.
Yeah.
So let's bring her in. Our guest tonight is Dr. Annette Toivonen, and she's the author of a book was going to be out any minute now, called Sustainable Space Tourism. Mm-hmm. And she tours and lectures on this and gathers with lots of like-minded people. And so she's also a teacher and a lecturer. And so let's bring her in right now. There.
Hey, how are you?
You got a new background too. Look at that. Did Sean do that for you?
I'm almost there. In Finland currently, but almost in space.
Okay.
Thank you so much for having me. And yes, it will be nice to open up a little bit of this phenomenon called space tourism, because we are having the word tourism in this wording, which is something that we all, maybe the ones who are not in the tourism industry, like in myself, as it was mentioned, I do teach, I do lecture, I do research. I have been a tourism researcher since 1997, when I went to university in London, called Westminster University, to study tourism and planning. So I've been doing tourism research for almost 30 years. And so my background is heavily on tourism industry planning and such. So this is a new angle to space industry. You usually have people coming from the tech, some kind of technical something to relate it to like astronauts. So this is a new angle completely. We are bringing now the world's second biggest industry to the space environment. So there is actually some kind of infrastructure, but we have on the soil of the planet. We have had for a couple of hundred years since the railway development started in the UK in the late 1900s. So this is exactly what we are now with this new space developments that we are to carry ordinary people to space environment. So we are kind of utilizing the similar kind of time parts that railway industry had 200 years ago when the first mass phase started, that you actually had a vehicle that was able to transport many people at once to a certain destination. So also with the aviation industry, but only started 100 years ago. We are seeing similar kind of parts that we did only 100 years ago when aviation started. It was first the activity for the elite who were able to afford the tickets. There were only a couple of vehicles that you were able to utilize and use. But then suddenly, just after some decades, we started to have mass tourism phase. So we are kind of seeing the similar development parts now with what we have already seen with some other big transportation industries. So kind of when we think of space tourism via that kind of lens of the development, how it started, it's kind of starting to be easier to understand. Obviously, we are dealing with space environment, which is not meant for human body. So we have a little bit of a problem here, bringing the human body to now an environment that is very hostile. We are not really meant to be in that environment for a long time. There have been a lot of studies already highlighting that we may lose eyesight or whatever else, like the bone density, if we are there for too long. So obviously we have these bodily issues to really solve at some point as well. But when we don't think of the body thing, if we are able to create some kind of a similar environment to what we have now in Earth, obviously we need then some infrastructure that is supporting that. So that's of course then what we need to first, when we are building up, let's say a lunar base, or then maybe in 25 years time, what Elon Musk is planning, that we have a Mars base.
Right,
So we definitely, when we are thinking of the infrastructure phase, which is now the first one that you were already talking, that we are going to have robots there to work and building up, that is definitely what we are going to need if we ever have humans there. Whoever works there, they will need to have some kind of bodily protection, because we can't be outside. So every kind of industry that relates to bodily functioning of humans, I think that's something that needs to really be there in the first infrastructure phase. Then when you think of bringing tourists, it's now I'm writing this new book. I have been written many books, and my book came out 2020 called Sustainable Space Tourism, an introduction. So that came out in the UK just handily, I think it was 1 year before 2021, when all these space companies managed to have their first flight to the suborbit. So we are talking about a 20-year development scale that they all had. All these companies, we are talking SpaceX, Virgin Galactic, and Blue Origin, they were already established after the millennium. And it took all of them about 20 years to actually get their product into the environment that it was meant to be. So it is because they are joining now the tourism industry, they are joining the aviation industry as we speak. There are a lot of laws and regulations when you are now dealing with ordinary people who are not wanting to die when they literally go to have the experience. They want to be secure, they want to trust the equipment. Then you have all these, insurance policies, all kinds of different things that you need to meet, that you're actually able to have the permission to even be a tourism provider. We are also thinking of now we have this kind of Wild West moment for space environment. It's basically, so there is no really legislation. The only thing that applies is like the maritime laws, literally, that we have on the oceans. So that's something, obviously now when you have tourism industry joining, tourism industry is highly regulated. When we think of aviation industry, that's even more highly. So when we have this launch, we have literally, there are moments in the beginning that the rocket that carries people is in the same environment that we have airplanes flying. And that industry is very heavily regulated. So you can't really have suddenly this other industry in the same exact environment without any laws and legislation.
The planes are going this way and we're going that
Yeah.
way. Yeah.
And also because they are literally in the first 10 kilometers, they are having the same altitude. So that's why this is a very, now when you think of how to develop tourism, how to really kind of start scaling and how to bring it kind of the infrastructure, you need to start now thinking of but whoever is now already operating in some of these environments. So the launch part, you already have aviation industry laws. You need to have a spaceport first in the soil of Earth that you are actually leaving for this trip. Is it then a business trip that you go there to be a worker for let's say you have a lunar base? If you go there for work purpose, you are classified as a business tourist. And if you go there for visiting the one who is working there, it's called a friends and relatives tourism.
So
I wanted to bring that up because it's interesting. It's interesting that you mentioned the different kinds of classifications of tourists, because I know since this whole tourism thing started in the United States in particular, some people who've actually been to ISS bristled at the idea of being called a tourist. People like Richard Garriott in particular, who's been up there a couple of times, they were doing experiments. They were actually doing stuff. I don't know if they got paid for it, but people paid to have him do their experiments for them for a week and a half on ISS. And no, he wasn't just what you think of as a tourist who's kind of sitting back and sipping a cocktail and watching, the world go by as you orbit the Earth. This was something. He was working hard, and he lost several pounds, I guess, while he was up there doing this. And so they try to come up with some other term like space flight participant or something like that. So it's interesting that you mentioned there may be different types of tiers of different kinds of travelers and what they might be doing and how long they might be staying.
This is an interesting talk and discussion how we actually define who is a tourist, who is some kind of a scientist who wants to kind of more be identified as such and not as a tourism person who is just carried to do leisure things. This is something I'm going to touch in my next book. It comes out in New York in next year. It's about space experience. So I think this is something that I'm really now concentrating in one of the chapters, really classifying what is meant by space tourism and the tourist itself, because this seems to be very theoretical difference. I'm from Europe, obviously from the Nordic to Scandinavia. We are just completely referring it as a tourism in a way. If you go there for any other purpose as a trained like astronaut, you are not a professional. You are basic because it needs to be defined for just because somebody needs to insert you. You need to, if something goes wrong, this definition is really important under which policy you are. Are you actually some kind of trained?
From an insurance perspective, wait a second. I never really thought about that piece of it. So the definition matters because the insurance policies will pay out differently if you're a different classification. Well, that's new to me. I never thought about that before.
There are a lot of things I have noticed just because obviously I have been doing this for 30 years and nobody really understands. I mean, we are talking about the second biggest industry. Whatever movements you do besides your own feet, if you decide to walk, you suddenly become part of the tourism industry from some angle. We all need to have a place to sleep. We all need to eat. We are kind of in the Maslow's hierarchy. The base needs a stage.
Right.
So that is already then you are joining tourism industry. Somebody's being there is a hospitality industry that provides all that. The transportation industry, they are all subcategories of this big tourism industry word. But I have noticed, especially with the Americans, it's kind of somehow belittling be called as tourist. Especially to the space environment, it suddenly becomes something that almost you're identifying yourself like some kind of mass group person who just goes there to take photos. That's the idea of
it's true, right? If we're just hanging out with a cocktail, we're not really doing space, right? Yeah.
So it sounds like almost like American space tourists needs to be very justifying their existence there by doing some really rhetorically good sounding job whilst they are in that environment, then it's kind of okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dennis Tito was, so his wealth came from private equity, I think. And
commercial real estate. He did a lot of that.
Did he? Yeah. And he didn't want to be seen as just coasting on his cash. The Katy Perry crowd didn't really want to be seen. It's one of the reasons why they took so much heat. They didn't really want to be seen as just coasting on their fame. So, in the chat, and I posted earlier, Dr. Plata is saying, look, tourism is it. Like he's a believer. So I didn't know that about Doug, but he is a believer that it's super lucrative. So how do you get from Dennis Tito to Katy Perry to a multi-billion-dollar industry? What are the steps we need to take to get from here to there?
Well, we have to understand the Dennis Tito. He became like a cosmonaut. He trained for 6 months for this.
Yeah.
So it's not that he only went there just
right.
When we think of now these other, like for example, what Katy Perry did, it was just a minimal training. It's not like she was in the training camp for 6 months just for this kind of space jump, as I do classify when you go to this, what has been now offered for about this 100 tourists that have been in the space environment, which is the Kármán line, about the 100 kilometers. That's where they have been, basically, most of them. And so it's not that you need to pick up 6 months in the astronaut camp just to become an astronaut. So that's the difference already. When we talk about tourism is something like this is like a kind of adventure tourism in a way. Also, when we think of you want to suddenly go to Mount Everest, to trek there and experience that. So you are kind of seeking an experience in space environment. When we have this word experience, is it a scientific experience? It's some kind of motivational view of, really making yourself as somebody else almost in another environment. That is tourism already. When we travel, we have a motivation of some kind. It could be just that I want to relax and have my cocktail, or it could be that I travel because I want to really spiritualize myself to become almost like another person when I come back. So there are all these different motivational factors already when we travel. So let's say that somebody wants to really do now this new experiment that you can already do. Let's say you go to the ocean. It's a similar kind of environment for the human body. You need to have some kind of space, like a wetsuit and all that, like gear that you can operate in that environment. You may do some kind of ocean studies whilst you are there. And so that is your motive, but you are needing to have the hospitality tourism industry just to take you to that spot. So that is how tourism industry is already combined with the space environment, even though your motivational factor of yourself could be something really science-based. But it still doesn't take out of the fact that you are actually kind of inside of this tourism industry package when you are not a professional, just literally, but like let's say astronauts have been working for NASA, that's your job. So that's something that needs to be, even though it sounds belittling to Americans, I don't know why, it's something that you need to really remember, that tourism is now a key to this whole thing. It's the key for the public to really understand the space environment. We do understand it now through science movies. I mean, Hollywood have been already doing this for 50 years. Yeah. We all have a vision of space just because of the Hollywood films. And it's not we know they're actors. They're part of the Hollywood industry. So it's anyway that has educated most of us the most. We feel like we already know space just because we have been watching all these space films. Right. So space is already a very familiar space for all of us just through the films, even though nobody has really been there. And we're all kind of having these visions and opinions just based on what we have been kind of, visualizing for since we were all like kids. So that's something to be remembered, that tourism is a tool that the wider public is kind of now brought in to realize that there is actually something happening there. We are trying to build a new place for humans. Like that's something that all these space billionaires kind of justify these colonies, that they want to ensure that the humans, we are just able to live in another planet in case there is an emergency in the planet. We don't really have a place be at the moment. We don't have any other place to go if there is an astronaut coming. So that's something we have to always remember, that we are in a very fragile state with our Earth. We could be just So that's one of the. But my book is kind of, because I wrote up this whole book about sustainable space tourism. That's one of the angles of the sustainability, sustaining the humans. Then you need to have these space colonies. You need to maybe have at least, we are starting with these in the next 5 years with the orbital hotels. They're not already being designed and built. And that's something already, but you are kind of, it's called hotel. It's not called like astronaut, scientific camp. It's actually called hotel.
Hotel. All right. That's a good point. So there's about 6 in the United States. I don't know what the number looks like in Europe and Japan, Asia, but there's about 6 U.S. space station companies in development. Let's give them all the benefit of the doubt, and they all succeed, and there's, let's just say, 50 people at a time rotating through those various stations, which, by the way, would be pretty damn cool, because right now we're kind of capped at about 10 in the 2 space stations that are up. That would be huge. What does the numbers look like? Do you have any idea of cash flow? How many people are going to do this? What they're willing to pay? Do you have any of those studies?
Well, it has been estimated. I have been writing this in my journal articles. Kind of just studying how the UBS, the Swiss forecasters, they estimated already like 5 years ago that it would be space tourism industry would be around like 4 billion by 2030. But now the estimates, just because of these developments that have been just recently taken place, or because we have NASA now involved, and it has the lunar goal that you have actually suddenly the government also in this private new space business, kind of joining it, building the infrastructure. So now it suddenly is like has really multiplied. It's almost like something like 100 billion by the year 2030. And now you have to understand that tourism, it also includes now the interest for the general space phenomena. We are talking now terrestrial space tourism, that is part of this space tourism package. So that's already the interest for people to visit like a earthbound space activities. That we are talking about space exhibitions, museums, space, watching Northern Lights trips, the stargazing trips, virtual reality space tourism. So all that is now part of the space tourism package when you think of the money-wise.
Okay.
But we do not really have to go even to space environments. This whole phenomena, and this space tourism industry now also has basically if you really have 3 categories. You have a terrestrial space tourism that is earthbound. Then you have a suborbital that we talk about now, these space jumps that we have been seeing these commercial space companies do and provide, and also these hotels. And then we have this lunar also. And then we have the kind of outer space tourism that includes the moon and Mars and whatever else. So you have kind of 3 different sectors underneath the space tourism industry word. So it's not only going to moon, it's actually already including the activities we have earthbound. And that's something that I would advise now, whoever is dealing with, like startup or something, that this terrestrial space tourism phase, that's already part of the hype. And that's already something that you can start providing, like virtual reality experiences before even nobody is even able to be in the space environment, because we do have this bodily issue to solve. That I mentioned in the meanwhile.
Well, but what are now the actual realities, the hard realities of supply and demand of what's going on right now? I had to mention Dr. Plata here. He did mention, he says he's a big fan. He thinks LEO tourism is a great thing. It's going to get big. But the CLIP stations that are being designed now by companies like VAST, he claims they're poorly designed to receive so many tourists. Well, where are these so many tourists coming from is what I don't see 100,000 people standing around with huge wads of cash in their hands saying, gee, if only I could find a station and get a flight, I would buy it today. I'm not seeing that. So where does it come from? Where does that demand get there? And how will the demand ultimately be met? Because it's a chicken and egg thing, and things bounce back and forth quite a lot.
Yeah. Well, first of all, we have the same, when we think of the aviation, how it developed. For the first 10 years, even though you have the knowledge now that something is happening, there's a new thing that you can be in the air, like in the aviation, that people started to realize that you actually can now take your body to the air, like you can fly. So that is the first kind of like 10 years, I would say, for the space tourism. It is kind of now the awareness raising, and nobody can really go there, even though, as you did mention, Thomas, that even though there will be a queue now of 100,000 people wanting to pay, you can't, because, I mean, all these vehicles, they take like 5 people at once. There are only a couple of them anyway. Right. So it's not even like a question at the moment, because even though there will be a desire and people would love to pay whatever, but you can't really, because it's just a limited amount of vehicles what we have. So we already will be, and the backlog, like Virgin Galactic, they have had this queue for, I think they have like at least 1,000 or now, because of the awareness, they have people now booking the flights. They are wanting to go to the queue. But so far they haven't even been operating for a couple of years, and they still have a couple of rockets that only take like a certain amount of people. So they have already this backlog of the queue. So suddenly we are actually having this moment that we are now raising the environment. There's a big now hype of space. And now we all know, and it's kind of, everybody's really, excited. And suddenly we have this thing that nobody can actually go because we don't have the vehicles.
It's a bottleneck.
That's why I'm saying that it's a space that concentrates now for the next 5 years on soil of Earth. What you can provide for the ones who are now eagerly waiting. You can be now part of that.
Yeah. And it's more expensive to build that commercial infrastructure in space than it was for the early days of aviation.
Yeah.
People like to complain, well, it only took 66 years to go from Kitty Hawk to Tranquility Base. Yeah. That's comparing apples and oranges. It only took 33 years to go from Kitty Hawk to the China Clipper.
Yeah.
And the reason that succeeded was because they were able to iterate quickly and cheaply, despite a world war in between. And they could build that technological capability. And remember, at the time, even the people who were flying those first China Clipper flights were paying the equivalent in today's dollars of about $5,000 for a round trip ticket. And so that's what bootstrapped it all along the way. We don't have that capability. You have to, if you want to be in orbit, you got to take that rocket flight, that expensive rocket flight, to get to that very minimal orbit, so you can get to a tourist space station to begin with. And it's a whole different supply chain and a set of numbers that goes into that. And I think until we can get those numbers to drop significantly, the demand, it won't improve.
Definitely, you need to first have the transportation vehicles, but I think now, because we still are talking about the 5 years, that it won't be that many people, because we don't have the transportation yet. The infrastructure is lacking. But once we start to get that one, then obviously the pricing will start going down, just because suddenly people realize that it's maybe a good idea now to be a transportation provider. That's what always is needed. When you think of whenever, you are going, like, let's say you build a tourism destination wherever in Earth at the moment, you need to have transportation links first established. Yeah. Nobody will walk there. I mean, so that's something that is first needed. And then you need to have the infrastructure once the transportation takes you somewhere. As I did mention, we have the bodily needs. You need to rest, you need to eat.
Mhm.
So you need a hospitality industry to welcome you at some form in the end part. So all this needs to be developed, and then we can start talking about this cocktail drinking and the experience that you guys in USA are defining now the tourism
Right,
to be.
right. All right,
Yeah.
all right. Tom,
Yes.
I thought you were going to ask the.
No, I've.
So we're down to our last 5 minutes. Let's kind of talk about a really specific future. So 5 years from now and 25 years from now, where do you think we're gonna be at? How many people are gonna be out there? The 3 places that you mentioned, low Earth orbit, the moon, and Mars. And then before we close, I really want to hear what you have to say about the flyby, the guy that's going to go and do a flyby out to Mars. So 4 minutes. That's a lot to cover in 4 minutes.
Yes. Well, I think, Elon Musk has mentioned that he has a timeline about 20 years when he is able to do the Mars colonizing phase. So I hope that he is able to deliver that, because with the scale of aviation, that would kind of time about right. So if we now start, it really depends on how the technology. Also depends on the legislative part. As I did mention, tourism industry is regulated. You can't really start having this industry without you have laws there, because we are talking about the insurance policies and all that. So there's a big kind of thing that needs to be first solved. We need to have, there is no legislation really for this. So that needs to be established globally in a way just to guide all these entrepreneurs how to do this, just to give the kind of global indicator. And also all these like robots and all that. So it really now we are having that next 2-3 years. We are now seeing like I think it determines like how the startups are able to deliver, how is the kind of economy being built. And that is something then that really makes the kind of timeline. Will it be kind of 10 years faster than forecasted, or 30 years? Like as mentioned, it already took 20 years for these companies, SpaceX, Blue Origin, and Virgin Galactic, to start operating. And they have been doing this like 20 years. But now I believe it really, but it can't really be said in a way. You do understand what I mean? But let's hope if everything goes right, we have this Mars colony with this Starship or whatever, vehicle starting to establish. Before that, we already have kind of practice with all these lunar hotels, moon infrastructure, all these transportations kind of nearby Earth. So I do believe that this actually could be reached if this all goes in favorable, as it kind of now looks like it's about to start going. But then we have these factors like legislation and all these other regulations that are to follow that may slow the process.
Right on. Thank you so much. That's great. We got just the last 2 minutes. What does 25 years look like? You're saying that this is the next 3, but 3 to 5 will determine. But where do you think we're going to be in 25 years? Do you have a guess on how many people are going to be out there?
No, that was maybe over the 25 years. Next 5 years, it will be not really anything that much, because we have this vehicle problem and such. So that was literally covering now the first like 25 years.
Okay.
So when you think of the aviation, then that is something to as time scale. It took like 40 years from the beginning to the mass phase in 1950s that we started now these tourism flights, as you had the visioning of space tourism. Took 40 years in that space. Before that, it was more like this kind of science almost orientated and transportational motivations.
Cool. Great.
All right. Dr. Annette Toivonen, I think I got that right. Thank you very much for being on the show. Thank
you so much.
It was just a whirlwind tour of your world, basically, and it was a lot of fun, and it was very, very enlightening. I learned more about space tourism in the last 30 minutes than I probably ever knew. So we will definitely have you back as things progress in this field, in this subsector of the endeavor. And thank you so much for being with us, and we'll
Thank
see
you
you
so
again
much.
soon.
Yes.
Thanks for getting up so early.
Yeah, it was like she's from Finland, so it's like
3,
well, it's 4 a.m. there now.
4 a.m. there.
So yeah. So thank God for her. Okay, well, on Monday, on Thursday, I'm sorry, Dr. Ajay Kathari will be back with us.
Okay.
And he's always a wealth of information about all sorts of things. And he can start going on again. Hey, not only how can we do this without SLS, but maybe even how can we do it without so much government commitment? That would be an interesting conversation to have. And I've got some articles backed up that make that case. I like to see what he thinks about it. And thanks everybody for coming by. I wasn't sure who to expect. It's a holiday,
Right.
We got up this morning because I asked ourselves, what are we doing? What did we get into? And yet it turned out great. You guys all turned up, in full. So you have no lives either, apparently. I'm kidding. You have lives, but love you. But it was fun to have you here too. You made a lot of great comments. I wish you could get more of those in there. But thanks for being here. And actually, next Monday will be our pre-ISDC warm-up show. So make sure you're here for that one on next Monday. And so, again, for Michael Lane, veteran, Sean Key, veteran, I remain Thomas Andrew Olson. Keep watching the skies.